Thank you, Dr. Ramaswamy. Thank you, Dr. Mohanty. It is indeed a moment of trepidation for me because prior to coming here, I saw the illustrious list of people who have delivered the distinguished lectures before I have. And you have Nobel laureates, not one, but a couple of them. You had literatures of international significance, and of course, academics from all over the world. So one feels humble, and one feels, as if I'm walking in the shadow of giants. So it's a privilege, it's an honor. Let me first tell you a little bit about the work that we do at Mindtree, whose chairman I am. I wonder how many of you have the Aadhaar card? Oh, excellent. Everybody has the Aadhaar card. So good that all of you have the Aadhaar card. The software engine which made the Aadhaar card possible for you was built by Mindtree. It's a platform that we built for the unique identity authority of India, and which seeks to provide identity to 1.2 billion people. In addition to that, my organization works in 4 defined verticals. We build applications for leading companies, organizations around the world. In areas like banking and financial services, we focus on manufacturing, retail, and CPG as it's called. There's a vertical where we focus on high tech. And last but not the least, we build applications focusing on travel and transportation. So the software that Mindtree builds makes 150 airlines fly around the world and land safely every day. So 150 million passengers, fly and land safely every day. Now, so much for Mindtree. I was telling about Mindtree so that you get a context of who I am, where I'm coming from. Then it will be possible for you to look at my worldview. I think as much as I co-founded Mindtree, whose chairman I am today, I also realized that it is my responsibility to write and document knowledge, because as leaders our job is not just to get the job done, but also to put together the knowledge so that others may go on to build something of higher significance. So I realized that it is very important to create content, because content survives the creator. As you people know it much better than others do. So content creates survival. Only when you create content that ideas get hands and legs, and then they begin to travel. So I wrote a number of books. And my books have been mostly for budding entrepreneurs and for professionals, people who want to be professionals, people who are already professionals. I felt that, in our journey from being a G20 country to a G8 country, which will happen sooner or later, or in other words, in our journey to be a developed nation, it will be a journey that will be marked by creation of an army of professionals who are world class. When we are able to produce world class professionals, we will be world class and will be a developed country. So keeping that factor in mind, I wanted to distinguish between professional qualification and professional competence. The two are not necessarily the same thing. So that became the basis of my book, The Professional. But as time progressed, I began to think of citizenship. And just as you don't bumble into being a good professional, you can't just bumble into being a good citizen. And in the course of a lot of deep questioning in my own mind, I came across a set of things which I want to present to you today. Now, when I was 30, I was sent off to the US by Wipro's chairman Azim Premji to create a beachhead for Wipro. and Wipro didn't have a presence. Wipro had a fledgling R&D which was under attack because multinationals were coming into India. And the issue was either to make this R&D a global lab on hire and work for design of various things for many large companies across the world, or face the inevitability of shutting it down. So I was sent across to the Silicon Valley to see if we can start doing R&D kind of work with other companies. And I was completely new to that country. My idea about the United States was very little. And as I landed there, there was a wonderful gentleman that I chanced to meet at the Indian consulate, where he had come for a visa, for getting a visa. So we became friends, just waiting in the waiting area of the consulate. And subsequently, he became very close, but he was twice my age. And he took on himself the responsibility of getting me immersed, getting me acclimatized with the American way, showing me around. So one day he came and said, "Come, I'll show you San Francisco." So he took me to San Francisco. And there's a place called Russian Hill in San Francisco. It's a very well-known place. And there he took me to the oldest surviving house, because that place has gone through several earthquakes. And there's one house which has survived all the earthquakes. So he happened to know, this gentleman who took me, his name is Tom, he took me, he knew the really old man in that old house who survived many earthquakes. The old man could hardly see or hear, but Tom said that, "Meet my friend from India." So he had a difficult time pronouncing my name, but he got it nonetheless. And once he realized I'm from India, he was really very happy to see me. And he said, "I have great memories about India." I said, "Tell me more about it." So he said that he had come to India in the 1960s as a Peace Corps volunteer. And then he laughed, his eyes closed, he laughed because he was remembering something. So I said, "What happened?" He said, "No, I laughed because we had been sent to Madhya Pradesh, somewhere deep inside Madhya Pradesh, to teach the farmers how to raise chicken. In 1960s India, if you remember, those of you who can remember, you didn't have broiler chicken or farm chicken. You only had country chicken. So for the first time, the government started teaching poultry farming to the farmers. So it was a new thing. So Peace Corps volunteers would come from the United States and teach our farmers on how to raise chicken. Now he was laughing because he said in the nights when we had to go to the fields, we had to carry a lantern. Okay. So these were his exact words. When we would go to the fields at night, we had to carry lanterns. So I was mortified hearing that. Here I am, information technology. Here am I sent on behalf of Wipro to conquer the world. And I was here to, rub shoulders with any tech giant in Silicon Valley and say, if, you can think of it, we can do it. And here's a man saying that the remembrance that he has of India is that he had to defecate in the fields at night. So very proudly, I immediately blurted out, I said, "Look, that India doesn't exist anymore. That India used to be a very long time ago." So he immediately said, yes, that's very good, that's very good. And, then coffee came, we chatted. And as we're coming back from that conversation, I actually bit my tongue and I realized that actually what I told him is not correct. That India is very much well and alive. The fact of the matter, I'm talking about this incident in 1990, the fact of the matter is even today, 2014, out of 1.3 billion people in this country, 50% do not have a toilet. So 50% do not have a toilet. And this is the largest single chunk of humanity that does not have access to a toilet. So there isn't really, at some level, a very big difference between the India of 1960s and the India of 2014. And I'm talking about this encounter with the gentleman who's like 25 years back. Now, I realized that as an Indian, I was suffering from ignorance, misinformation, and denial. There are three different things. So there's ignorance, and there is misinformation, and there is denial. So that is the turning point where my mind began to question, why is it that we live in ignorance, misinformation, and denial? And is there a reason which is why we seem to be having that in every other aspect of life as well? So this is a story of that. So let's look at the issue of ignorance, misinformation, and denial in different parts of life, not just raising chicken. So let's look at respect for life. Don't read the slides. Just stay with me. In 1993, 3 years after I met this gentleman, I came back to India. And, I was the first chief executive of Wipro's global R&D. Our work flourished, our business flourished. In 1996, Wipro's chairman, Azim Premji, called me and said, we want Wipro to embrace the idea of total quality management. So I was sent off to Japan and to Europe and to US again and see how quality is done, and then went to this place called Motorola University and learned about Six Sigma quality there. And when Wipro's journey, quality journey, had to be scripted, we took the help of Motorola University. And a group of Motorola University consultants arrived to teach the Wipro core team about the essence of Six Sigma quality, which required a lot of theoretical understanding, classroom training, and so on. Now, over a weekend, 2 of their senior teachers were at loose ends. They had nothing much to do. So me and my wife, Sushmita, we said, let's take you on a walking tour of Bangalore. Bangalore was a much smaller city at that time. This is Deepavali time. And off MG Road, there's a small strip of road called Rest House Road. So we were walking, the 4 of us, me, my wife, and these 2 gentlemen. And as we were walking, leisurely, gingerly, there were 2 girls, young girls, who were about maybe 200 steps ahead of us. They were walking in their own direction and quite oblivious of us. And suddenly what happened, we realized that somebody has thrown a cracker which has actually burst just next to these 2 girls. In a loud burst, the cracker has burst. Now then we turned back and saw actually 2 boys. Either they did it deliberately or they didn't do it deliberately. It's just that they're playing with crackers. The lit cracker went and just exploded near the leg of these 2 girls. So these 2 gentlemen looked at this, looked at the what could have been a major accident, and looked at me, and one of them said, tell me one thing, why is human life not respected in this country? This is a big question. Why is human life not respected in this country? So the issue was not the bursting of the cracker, the potential accident. In that one question, they straight came to the root cause. The root cause is we have low respect for human life. Now look at these numbers here. So about a couple of years back, you have heard about the boat capsizing on Brahmaputra. Okay? 300 people died. But the thing is, many of these people are riding on the roof of that boat. But more significantly, half of these people, who they were is not known even today, because anybody can ride a boat crossing a river as big as the Brahmaputra. There is no need for any record keeping as to who is boarding that boat. But what is even more interesting is the fact that the boat, which is a fairly large mechanized boat, had not gone for inspection, mandatory inspection required every year. The boat had not gone for the last 16 years. So 16 years the boat has not been inspected. Forget about any other safety precaution. Forget about lack of documentation. Forget about the fact that the boat did not have life-saving jackets and those kinds of things. Now, those of you who do not know, one death takes place every 4 minutes on India's highways. Every 4 minutes. This roughly translates to about 137,000 people dying out of road accidents. And sometimes these people, about 80,000 odd people, the Indian Orthopedic Association tells, die because they're not wearing helmets. And if you go to the Indian Orthopedic Association's site and download slides, you will see gory slides where people were carrying tomatoes or eggs in the helmet. They had the helmet, okay, and the tomatoes and the eggs were intact, but the brain was on the road. Okay. Not a nice thing, because 3% of the GDP actually is spent on road accidents, in treatment or in loss related to road accidents. So it might tickle our funny bones to hear about the tomato and the egg, but many of them are the lone breadwinners of the family. Now, 15,000 people die in India every year in trying to cross railroads. But what is more significant is that 6,000 of these people die every year in Mumbai city alone. Okay. And the Indian Railways does not treat this as an accident because they did not cause it. If you just haphazardly come in front of a running train, the railways have nothing to do with that. It's got to do with you. So it is not acknowledged as an accident. Forget about the railways. There has to be some system that actually says, no, it is an accident. Forget about who caused it. 6,000 people die in one metropolitan area is roughly the number of Indians who died in the tsunami. And there was national outpouring when that happened. So there is a sense that when it comes to respect for human life, and I could have gone on and on, but the Vice Chancellor has given me 40 minutes, so I have to stop here. So when it comes to respect for life, we tend to trivialize as a nation. Now, I want to tease you here. Have you seen the Hindu hijab? Of course, when we talk about the hijab, we think of our Islamic brethren, but has anybody seen a Hindu hijab lately? There is a Hindu hijab. I'm sure the Hindu hijab can be seen even in your university campus. No? You haven't seen a young woman anywhere who covers her head with her dupatta or whatever it is, and covers her nose, and only her eyes are seen, okay? And sometimes she protects herself with earphone cables dangling on both sides, is basically said, don't talk to me, okay? So this is the Hindu hijab, right? And this started in 1 or 2 cities like Pune, and now for every defenseless Indian young woman, she's safer behind the Hindu hijab, okay? And no other form of protection exists. And I was very pleasantly surprised that when I was scanning your website, it talked about surveillance. It said that the entire facility is under surveillance. I wouldn't have taken note of that. I would have actually looked down upon that, big brother is watching kind of thing in an educational institution, but I understand where you're coming from. So if you look at the data, we are the worst place among G20 countries, and we're in the top 5 most dangerous places in the world for women. We are the 6th most dangerous place for children. And where is this danger mostly present? It is mostly present in school buses. So most school children are exposed to danger when they're traveling in their own school buses. Now, when the tragic incident happened in Delhi, when a young woman was raped in a bus and then thrown on the roadside, eventually dying, who the Prime Minister named Nirbhaya, it was an instant and justified outpouring of emotions. Whole of the national capital came to convulsion. People stood candlelight vigil, and it's a good question to wonder what happened after. Every single week after that absolutely brutal incident, there has been a case of rape in every metropolitan city in India, reported case of rape. And when recently, because of a Khap Panchayat, 14 villagers raped a 20-year-old girl, one after the other, under instruction from the village chief, in a state where a woman is the chief minister. It actually did not cause any furor or anger. Life moved on. Why does it happen? Are we trivializing something here? Now, the trivialization has got to do with what a nation remembers and what a nation forgets. It's very interesting as to why some nations remember some things and some nations forget something. There's a collective memory at work here. Now, what should we remember as a nation and what should we forget? Let me give you a quiz here. Since I'm in a university, I have to give you a quiz. So, who in the audience can tell me the significance of 13th December? 13th December, why is it significant in India? Exactly. So at least one person in 150 knows. Most of us don't know. So what happened? I was in the United States some time back. Okay, so I was in the United States, a few months back, and I was talking to an 8-year-old child, a school child from a middle-class family, and that kid told me all the facts about 9/11 that I knew. And that child was not indoctrinated. There was nobody who had brainwashed him. So it's a normal child from a normal middle-class home. Now, I'm not taking any position on, whether on the rationale behind 9/11 and the reaction and what happened afterwards. I'm just talking about a historic fact and point. So this kid had all the information about 9/11, and it was very clear because an 8 or 9-year-old child, this child was not born. This child was not conceived when 9/11 happened. Yet this child, and the system has not forgotten. But you talk to the average Indian and ask what is 13 December, they will not be able to tell. You ask the average Indian, when did 26/11 happen? And I'm not saying these dates from a jingoistic standpoint. Okay, I'm just saying that because these were at that point in time very, very significant. These dates, the events that happened on these dates, rattled us on that moment in time. But we moved on. Now, few weeks back, I realized that I have not heard some of the contenders to the highest political office in the country making their electoral manifesto known. So I said, let me look at 3 or 4 of them, particularly zeroed in on 2 of them, and spent a whole Sunday downloading their speeches at different electoral rallies, platforms, as an Indian, to say what are they saying, how are they saying it. And in one such rally, one gentleman, he was in Meerut, and he was trying to rouse the audience by talking about 1857, and said that 1857 was the year of Sepoy Mutiny, and the mutiny began in this land, your land, holy land, and all that kind of stuff, and said that the other party, have actually erased it from your memory, and they should have done something to keep this whole thing alive. This must have been recorded about maybe 6-8 weeks back. I don't know how many of you noticed 3 days ago, the Hindu, in its 13th page, ran this small news, and there's nothing wrong with Hindu. Hindu was great to actually even run it, which talked about the 1857 revolution in a different context. About 500 people, Sikh soldiers, in a military establishment in a barrack near Lahore, had revolted, and 218 of them were shot dead. 282 of them were kept in a really tiny room where most of them died of suffocation. And those who did not die were shot, and under the orders of the Deputy Commissioner of Amritsar, they were dumped in a well. So the news item that the Hindu ran was that the local Gurdwara, with the help of the local villagers, had dug up and found the remains, the bones of these 282 people. And of course, when villagers dig up, not the Archaeological Survey of India, which should have been pressed into service, poor villagers volunteering, digging up a well, they obviously damaged many of those bones. Any other country, a DNA test would have happened. Any other country, they would have been segregated differently. So what was happening right now? Right now, the villagers were waiting for a land allotment. In India, everything has to come down to land allotment so that a memorial can be created. So why is it that some nations remember some things? And why is it that some nations forget some things? The remembrance of things are related to basically what we call memes, which are the DNA equivalent of an idea. Some ideas will propagate, some ideas will not propagate. And those ideas which will propagate, they are actually backed by strong memes. So that's why, you know, if you look at the tricolor, it is nothing but a meme. The Indian Constitution is nothing but a meme. The logo of your university is nothing but a meme. And the mimetic continuity of a nation is a memeplex, or rather a meme of, it's a meme of memes. So whose job it is to continue the mimetic flow that makes a society or a nation what it is. Now, before we go anywhere, let me talk about this term called robber baron businessman. This term originated in Germany because there's some barons in medieval times. Barons are like, residual princely people, on the fringes, sometimes of dubious lineage. Right? So the king may have many wives and, significant others or whatever it is, and somebody becomes a baron, and everybody can't be a prince and king or whatever it is, so you're given your little fiefdom. See, barons used to block merchant vessels plying in the rivers, like Rhine and Main, etc., and they would extort money. So they were called the robber barons. They were both baron and robbers. So the term became more prevalent in the United States of America when people did all kinds of things, mostly robbing. And then these robbing businessmen turned over their money for building great educational institutions, including, the money that came to build Stanford University is associated with somebody who made money with dubitable business practices. So similarly, people say that the money that built railroads and built the developmental infrastructure and built sometimes even the intellectual infrastructure of the United States came from these robber barons. Okay. Now, where this conversation is going is that there is an inevitability. Every nation will go through a phase where there will be robber barons, and it's a phase. It's a 40, 50, 60-year phase. And you know what? Some of these guys are actually very pious guys. Okay. So these are the guys, this is the kind of robber barons that we have in our country. So Satyam robber baron, all these are, by the way, these are crores. Okay. So it's 900 crores. Actually, the certain people are small-time people. When you look at these numbers here, they're really small-time people. You know, they should have been let off with a little reprimand, with a little, rap on their knuckles. The Commonwealth game, 800 crores. The 2G scam, 17,600 crores. Bellary, the state I come from, Karnataka, 16,000 crores. The state I was born in, 60,000 crores. The coal block is 10,67,000 crores. Can you believe it? 10,67,000 crores. Actually, money ceases to be of any consequence at that level. Overall, we are talking about a corruption rate of something like 1,55,500 crores, leaving aside money laundering of 186,000 crores. Okay. So this is the robber baron businessman profile of India. Now, we'll talk about what is the implication. I can keep you all day here talking about the socio-political, economic implications of some of these things. But again, I'll just tell you something very interesting. I was working with 31 children, all of the age of 16, from a few schools in Bangalore. 14 girls, 17 boys, and was working over a period of 3 months to understand what they think about the world of business. And a lot of their questions to me was on ethics and morality. And at one stage, one kid said, so what is the big deal in going to jail for 2 months if I can make 200 crores? Okay. Not a bad return on investment, right? So what our robber baron businessmen don't understand is what kind of mental genetic printing that they are doing by trivializing. You know, so you ask all these people and they will say, I'm not doing it for myself. You know, I'm doing it for the party. I'm doing it for the country. I'm doing it for my people. You know, there'll be a lot of trivialization on this. So let's move to government. You know, I've beaten up the business people, so let me now talk about the government. And government, I'm sure each one of you can write a book, a thesis, a PhD on how government can trivialize things. But a couple of years back, an aircraft landed in the Indira Gandhi International Airport in Delhi. The aircraft came as a hijacked aircraft. And the moment the hijack alarm went off, if you look at airport parameter security, up to a point it is, you know, up to the curb side it is the local police. Beyond the curb side and inside the airport it is the CISF territory, and on the tarmac it is commando territory. The training you require for handling exigencies on all three are very different. So when the hijack scare happened and the plane landed, every hijacked plane has to be taken to the farthest corner of the tarmac for obvious reasons. You don't want to endanger, you don't know, the plane might have explosives, somebody can do some stupid thing. So it was taken to an extreme corner of the runway, and now the system must take over. So before anything could happen, there was fisticuff between Delhi police and the commandos which had just been moved from Ghaziabad. Okay. First of all, the commandos could not move on time because their boss was missing. Okay. And after the boss was located and they tied their headgear and everything else, they came and got into a fight with Delhi police. Why? On a simple issue, when you bring in a hijacked aircraft on a tarmac, you are supposed to light it up from all sides, according to standard operating procedure. The cops did not know that. So the cops would not let the tarmac lights to be switched on because they thought it's a risk, and the commandos said we have to jolly well switch it on. So before anything happened, the commandos and Delhi police went into a fisticuff. So the good news is at the end of the day, it wasn't a hijacked aircraft. It was just, you know, one of the robber baron businessmen who had gotten drunk. Okay, and something had happened. Okay, so all is well that ends well, and but it delivered a very powerful message to New Delhi. that the Indira Gandhi International Airport is not equipped to handle a crisis. So what happened was a joint ministerial high-powered committee was created, and this committee said the standing orders have to be redone, people have to be retrained, and everything else. And by the way, we need a hotline. We need a hotline between Indira Gandhi International Airport. The moment there's a hijack, there's a hotline that will be activated, which will ring a bell in the Ministry of Home Affairs, okay, which controls all the law and order. And somebody in his profound judgment thought that a connection of that hotline should be in the Rashtrapati Bhavan, which must be a tribute to the head of state of some sort, I don't know. Okay. So the hotline was established. 2 years after that, Hindustan Times reported another hijack scare. Okay, this time a simulation that was done by the government, and lo and behold, the hotlines were not working. So if you look at situations like this, okay, there's something called the National Disaster Management Authority, which was created some time back after particularly the Latur earthquake. And it was headed by a retired general of the Indian Army. The Prime Minister himself was the chairperson of the National Disaster Management Authority. And so they have a website. In the event of a disaster of large proportion, I would argue that you would require internet on your site. I would argue that you would require solar powered devices on your site, and you would require wireless equipment. Then you have some capacity to deal with the disaster. So a website becomes a very, very critical thing. So when I visited the NDMA website on 1st of February, the website had several links on the right-hand side. So there's a link which said natural disaster. I clicked on it, and it was a broken web page. Then below that was man-made disaster. I said, at least this should work. I clicked on it, and it was a broken page. It led to nowhere. But something has happened in the last 2-3 weeks. So today again I checked and I found that there is a new website in there. And that website, however, has very prominent lettering on it, says beta release. So somebody must be very fond of terms like beta release. So years after the NDMA has been set up, we have a beta release of a site there. But don't laugh, have a good look at your own website. Incidentally, your home page has something called statistics. If you click on it, nothing will happen. There's a PDF file below that, and the file doesn't load. And I could, entertain you with many, many trivia. But just so you know that you must be the first university in the world that has got something called Office of Vice. Okay, and don't click on it. So clearly somebody is trivializing content. So what's the big deal about a website? Your website, NDMA's website. What's the big deal about a hotline? How does it matter? Now, why do we trivialize things? Can we have 1 or 2 quick suggestions? Why do you think we trivialize things? Too many things. So any place which will have too many things will trivialize.
Then leaders say that we should move on. That is the last sentence, Prime Minister or President was saying, we should move on. So we submit everything and move on.
Do you think we so really listen to the Prime Minister or President? Some of the young friends here, you should have a view on this. Thank you, sir, for those. Obviously what you are saying has a lot of meaning. Okay, in times of distress and difficulty, we look up to authority. But are there any other thoughts that you might have? Why do we trivialize things? Faith, okay. Yeah, that's very true actually.
Ends matter, means don't matter.
Yeah, you're very right. We believe that, if you look at all the list of the scams particularly, the end matters, doesn't matter. Every other businessman in this country, I shouldn't be so drastic. Most businessmen and women in this country, they trivialize. It doesn't matter. You know, what matters is that I'm creating employment. I've been talking to people across the country. I've been talking to teachers, I've been talking to sociologists, I've been talking to psychologists, I've been talking to historians, I've been talking to businessmen, government servants, police. And you know, so far, again, there are many reasons that are coming up, and this is not an exhaustive list. The first one was, told to me from a historic point of view by Mrs. Sudha Murthy. And she was talking about Lord Clive. Lord Clive, who defeated Sirajuddaula in the Battle of Plassey, or Plassey as they would say, was actually charge-sheeted in the British Parliament, in the English Parliament, because he was he didn't have orders. He just took on upon himself what the crown should have done, and he was just an employee of the East India Company. So he had no, so he had no right, no authority to do what he was doing. And this is what he argued. He said, look, when I went to fight the Battle of Plassey, fight Sirajuddaula, throughout the journey, on both sides of the road, men, women, and children stood. And if every man, woman, and child would have thrown a stone at us, then we would have been buried to death right there. But nobody lifted a hand, because India does not belong to anyone. Only when a land belongs to you, you feel that this land belongs to me, that you will raise a hand. So there is some meaning and some truth there, that India probably belongs to no one. Many people that I meet, particularly historians and sociologists, tell me that, look, our history will follow the history of nations. There is a historical paradigm, a historical model, if you will, that exists. And somebody said, Sweden, some 40, 50, 60 years back, or maybe a little more, maybe 80 years back, were one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Sweden was one of the poorest countries of the world. And today it is one of the cleaner countries of the world, and certainly one of the most prosperous countries. When we look at the United States vis-a-vis India, people are very quick to say, look at Rockefeller, look at the money that went to Stanford University, look at the railroads, for example. All this is gang and mob money and so on and so forth. So there's an inevitability there. That what we are seeing today, don't worry, the Bellary scam, the 2G scam, the 4G scam, the money laundering, all will settle down. Okay. And one day, everybody will turn over, the robber barons will turn over, and we'll have the counterparts of Stanford universities on the periphery of Hyderabad University. There is a young industrialist whose name I'm not going to reveal to you for his request for privacy, who's globally educated and would be probably one of the most respected people in that category in his early 30s. He said, probably we got our freedom cheap. And I see a lot of validity in what he is saying, because if you go to France, for example, and talk to any common person on the street, that person can take you to a cemetery and say that this graveyard here and the tombstone here that identifies the graveyard indicates that this is my great-grandfather, this is my great-grandmother. Okay? They died during the revolution. So people can identify somebody who actually paid a personal price. Most of us, 98% of us Indians, had nothing to do with the freedom movement. There were people who were obviously doing the satyagraha and things like that, but how many people's relatives are listed in the on the walls of the Andaman Nicobar, the cellular jail. Now, very interestingly, somebody I was discussing this issue with told me that the person had gone to Russia and was being shown around, and the individual told the guide, take me to a place where normally you don't take people, and you choose the place. So the guide took her to this place, which is nothing but a cemetery. And there, as they were entering, a newly married couple who were kneeling in front of a grave. And the bride was in bridal finery, and the bridegroom was it was very evident that had just come out of the church or wherever the wedding had taken place. So he was in his wedding suit. And so she asked, why are they here? Obviously, they're here to pay respects to their ancestors. So the guide went and asked the couple. Couple answered that yes, this is the graveyard of the girl's great grandfather, and then they would from here turn to his great grandmother's tombstone. So this is very significant because these are people who have given their lives, and they have given their lives so that you and I are alive today, that you and I are born today, that you and I have freedom today. And the question that came up is, even if you don't have somebody who died in the freedom struggle, even if you don't have a relative whose name is listed on the cellular jail's walls, how many newly married people will go there to start their life? Now, then there is a question, whose India is it? Is it my India because I speak English? Is it your India because you understand the language that I'm speaking? Or is it the India of the person who's in the Naxalite-infested hinterlands where the land no longer belongs to the keepers of the Constitution of India? Or is it the India of the people below the poverty line? Whose India is it? And is there even one country? So McKinsey has come out with a book called Reimagining India. And if you read that book, it's a fairly fat book which has writings from thinkers, business people, technocrats. It basically one very consistent theme that comes out is that is India one India? So these could be some of the reasons, but again, for the paucity of time, I'm just talking about 4 possible reasons here. This is not exhaustive. But whatever it is, I think it is time to break free. Break free from this pervasive urge to trivialize. Trivialize everything. Trivialize education, trivialize the website, trivialize the hijack situation, trivialize the rural health for all, trivialize the midday meal scheme. So we need to break free, and this is something that you and I could do. Now, I think people who don't trivialize, they always remember where they come from. Like this couple who was kneeling down at the cemetery in prayer before starting their life. You will find that the list of people who are behind the list of scams that I just showed you have in their moment completely forgotten where they come from. If you and I remember our beginnings, that's the, particularly for the Indian middle class, that's our strength, that all of us would have reasonably humble beginning. If I'm trying to trivialize something, in that moment I pause and just remember where I come from, maybe I'll think twice. Maybe I will not trivialize. So I need to know where I come from all the time. And before I trivialize, I need to step back and ask if this is the right thing to do or is this the convenient thing to do. How does it matter, In Mindtree we had, we hire engineers every year and we train them for a period of 3 months. At the end of the paid training of 3 months, they're required to take tests. So we gave them a programming test, and it was a short program that they had to write. So 52 kids turned in the same exact program with the same exact syntax and same exact thing to the last detail. So we obviously sacked them. We didn't exactly sack them. We said, okay, so this is not going to work. And look, this is a breach of integrity. And had it been somebody senior, we would have immediately sacked. But why don't you take another test? So we gave another test, and those 52 kids flunked that test, which was an easier test. And then this time we said, we are not the right company for you. But the difficult thing is that they were perplexed. They didn't know what is it that they have done wrong. So it is a situation where they are unable to distinguish between what is the right thing and what is the convenient thing. The third thing is for me to look beyond the apparent. As a nation, we have difficulty doing a root cause analysis. So if there is a problem, there's an issue that we have to deal with, whether it is a natural disaster, whether it is a poor turnout of voters in a constituency, whether it is healthcare, whether it is education. If there is a problem, we don't tend to think of the root cause. The Japanese think of the root cause. The Germans think of the root cause. The reason that Japan and Germany are where they are as nations today, at least from the point of view of social progress, from the point of view of economic progress, technological progress, it is because they're obsessed with root cause and systemic solutions. We have difficulty doing root cause analysis. So we are a band-aid. We love to put band-aid on anything. So there's a rape victim lying in a government hospital. The government decides to fly her to Singapore. You know, one is not questioning that. The thing that one is questioning is, so the medical facilities and fraternity in India were incapable of dealing with the situation, number one. Number two, was that the real reason, or were you trying to do damage control? Is this an act of populism? That is right, and we're being unnecessarily cynical. The question is, for every rape victim after that every week, would the government send them overseas for treatment? Okay. So this is a classic example of putting a band-aid on the thing rather than stepping back and doing a root cause analysis and doing something because it's the right thing to do as against being the convenient thing to do. I must make the choice. Whenever I'm making a choice at a personal level, at a group level, as an institution, I need to contemplate the consequences. It's a difficult proposition, particularly in government, where the longevity of people is so less. Okay. So it doesn't matter to me what the consequences is. That is for somebody else to figure out. Let me do what I need to do. I need to take a long view of time. Nations who make progress actually take a long view of time. And what is a long view of time? The long view of time is usually to contemplate what kind of a land, what kind of an ecosystem, what kind of an air will my great-grandchildren inherit. If the average Indian just steps back before doing something convenient, which is not right, and asks himself or herself, look, if my great-grandchild will face the world tomorrow and will be seen as a corrupt guy, if the world will look down upon that individual, will think that this individual is a lesser life form, how would I feel? Now, you will never meet your great-grandchild. You'll be dead long before that. But if we take that long view of time, then suddenly you will not have any difficulty figuring out what is right and what is convenient. So if you take a short view of time, everything is okay. Because in this life, I'll go to a jail 2-3 times, come out, I will complain of chest pain, which works miraculously. Okay? And if I'm rich and famous, then, going to a jail is also a badge of honor now. It actually shows that you are competent, if nothing else. So, at the end of the day, how does it matter if you send me to jail a couple of times, Tihar jail and Agrahara, Prapanna and Bangalore, you have nice jails here as well. And then, of course, you can be put on house arrest. You can get homemade food in jail also. Okay, you can be allowed to keep your cell phone. You can browse the internet. No big deal. Okay, and at the end of the day, the good guy and the bad guy, both guys will go 6 feet down under. Right? Somebody will be burned on a log, and somebody will be buried. But you'll all go. Who knows whether there's really heaven or hell, for that matter? Okay, it's an intellectual conversation. It's a myth. But what is not a myth is the possibility that you will produce a great-grandchild. What is not a myth is that that great-grandchild will live in the comity of nations. And then you step back and say, if people think that India is one of the world's top 5 countries in terms of danger to women, danger to children, and one of the top 5 countries in the world in terms of corruption index, then you will step back and say maybe not. So the long view of time. Now, the other very important thing is I must learn my lessons from history, but I should have a languid view of time. The moment you say, you talk about the robber barons, and you talk about, what happened in Sweden, what happened in England for that matter, in terms of how many people should die of tuberculosis and what really happened to the coal miners and so on. And then you take the comfort that, what we are going through is just a phase. It is as if it is our teens. It is the democratic teens. Okay? So some facial hair will appear, some disenchantment will happen, some angst will happen, and then we'll blossom into the butterfly. We'll get into our 20s, and everything will be all right. Now, it is very important to know that there are historical precedences, but to think that this will all be automatically okay for us is like taking a languid view of time, and it may not exactly work like that. So let me talk about a few more things. I, as a citizen, cannot cherry pick with laws. The red light is not convenient because I have a flight to catch. Okay, so this moment in jumping the red light, I'm cherry picking. This is not a law that is relevant at this point in time to me. The right to property is very important to me because you are my neighbor, okay, and you should not encroach 1 millimeter into my land. Okay. Then we can, fight it out in a court of law. But you know what? The tax laws are not convenient for me. So I'll cherry pick the right to property, but ignore the red light law, ignore the tax law. I cannot cherry pick with laws, because if I cherry pick with laws, you will cherry pick with laws. And when both of us cherry pick with laws, we listen to the word of law or follow the word of law selectively, then the system fails collectively. As a nation, we need to question our transparency. Okay? And we need to respect, and this should gladden the heart of academicians here, we really don't respect the idea of harvesting knowledge. So disasters happen, problems take place. There are corrupt individuals who take the system on a hijack. But even in those negative things, there is powerful knowledge. So the Navy lost submarines. It is all shrouded in mystery. But if we really understand, do a root cause analysis, get into the depth of why things happened the way it happened, it may have a consequence in the annals of research relating to, God alone knows, plastic technology, polymer technology, nuclear engineering, mechanical engineering. It may have an implication in terms of breakthrough in building a next generation of boilers. Who knows? But we live in the shrouds of mystery, and then I told you that we don't remember things very well as a nation. So we, in the process, lose valuable knowledge. And this harvesting of knowledge has to happen when we need to fix responsibility, but one thing is to fix responsibility and witch hunting. The other is to find out what is it that really went wrong. We tend to drag feet on issues particularly concerning the rich and the famous, and we can't do that. So Salman Khan did what, apart from making great movies? Huh? Yeah, of course. Being human NGO. What else did he do? Okay, so he killed black bucks, which is an endangered species. Okay, so he killed deer, which is a protected species, protected by the Bishnois apart from the laws in Rajasthan. And in a spree, allegedly, I shouldn't say he killed because I am not the court of law. Okay, so I take my words back. He and his friends allegedly shot black bucks. Okay. And then they were caught, and they were, police got into the action, villagers got into the action, and then the issue was three things. One is the alleged killing of the black bucks. The second was the killing was done with weapons which didn't have license. The license had expired. Third, they indulged in rioting. Okay. So there are three different offenses. Now, will you combine the three offenses, or would you charge them separately? This became a conversation between the trial court, the High Court, and the Supreme Court. Okay. Can you combine? Because there are other implications. Because the lawyers pleaded that, look, yes, the guns of some of these people are guns, but you know what, those guns, and yes, the licenses for those guns had expired, but you know what, those licenses of the expired guns, those guns were in Bombay and they're never here. So if you chase that line of conversation, it is one thing to have an unlicensed gun, an unlicensed gun here and now to kill something. The two different things. So 3 levels of judicial system has been going up and down. Okay. How many years guess back was that? And this group cannot answer. So people here who talked about being human, tell me how many years do you think back this happened? 16 years, you're close. Okay. So 16 years is the time a child becomes a grown-up teenager. A teenager becomes a middle-aged man. A middle-aged man dies in 16 years, a long period of time. Okay? So the judicial system went up and down, and charges could not be framed, because whether we are going to combine the 3 allegations or not. So matter went all the way to Supreme Court. 2 years after that, he actually mowed down a pavement, people sleeping on the pavement, and one individual died. And the charges have been formally pressed only now. So we can't let time, time drag, particularly when it comes to the rich and the famous in this country. Now that may sound like inequality working the reverse way, but you know what? Rich and famous people have unusual power to obstruct the path of justice. They can actually come in the way of the path of justice, and there are people in the legal fraternity who can suddenly trivialize things. Evidences can be destroyed. People who were once willing to testify will become turncoat. Anything can happen. 16 years is a long time. Now, here's a society which has somehow difficulty saying, here's a society that breeds people who make mistakes. People make mistakes in every part of the world. It's not like, we are the only ones who do these things. from coal block to killing black buck. But compared to many other parts of the world where more, difficult things happen, I tend to see that people have, easier time saying sorry. There was a time when Bill Clinton denied any, sexual fling in the White House, and then, how many? Did it take 16 years for the guy to say yes, no, maybe? No. If the moment the matter was, and the matter didn't go to the Supreme Court of the United States of America, by the way. The guy just stood up and says, I'm sorry. We are human, you are human, everybody is human. At some point in time, somewhere the synaptic process goes haywire in the brain, you make a mistake, but you stand up and say, I accept, I did it, and I'm sorry. How many Indian politicians, how many Indian businessmen, how many Indian bureaucrats, and how many Indian educations, some of them have done fairly illustrious amount of plagiarism in the past, which came into news and stuff like that. How many of us stand up and say, I'm sorry? There's a power in saying, I'm sorry, and there's a power then for the larger system to forgive. Because we don't want to make, permanent martyrs and permanent villains. In time, who's a martyr and who's a villain sometimes get mixed up. And today's martyr can be tomorrow's villain and vice versa. So society needs to learn how to forgive as well. Now, we also need to understand that as a society, apathy and anger are equally useless weapons for bringing up sustainable change. Anger particularly is not a good emotion. It is an emotion required for flight and fight. It's an emotion triggered by high release of hormones in the system that are meant to use only for self-defense. You don't bring out sustained change in your life, somebody else's life, in a collective life by demonstration of anger. Anger is not an emotion meant for doing that. Finally, and I'm going to end here, as a nation we need to understand that law cannot be a substitute for character. I believe that in India we have the highest per capita number of laws. I can argue justifiably that all of us have violated at least 3 laws by being in this room at this point in time. Okay. The air conditioning may be actually not up to the mark if a health inspector comes in here. I can argue that, the fire exits are actually not marked, by the way, sir. The exits are not marked here. So, whether it is that, or it is something else, or in some part of Hyderabad right now there may be 144 in place. Okay. Or I might have violated the model code of conduct, and you, by listening to me at this point in time, might be in complicity. So, per capita, there is no dearth of laws. I was talking to a small restaurant owner in Bangalore, and he said that there are 14 different classes of people who can come and shut down his restaurant for violation of one or the other standing order of one or the other organization, starting from the municipal corporation to fire to police to whoever. Okay. So there is, no dearth of laws in India. There's no per capita. I think we have the highest number of regulators. We have the highest amount of law, highest number of regulators. Indian Constitution is one of the fattest and written down documents in human history, but it cannot substitute for character. What we are seeing as a nation in a nation at a fork is a crisis of character, not a crisis of law. So thanks for listening to me, and once again, sir, thank you for considering me worthy of the distinguished lecture series. I'm very grateful that you took the time to listen to me. Thank you.